Do you ever feel like you're a burden? Like, not in a dramatic way, not in a way where someone actually says it to you, but in that quiet way where you start feeling like your problems, your thoughts, your emotions are just too much for other people. Because that's something I've been dealing with a lot lately. And it's weird because no one really tells you that you're a burden. It's something you start telling yourself. Like you'll be about to say something about how you're feeling, and then you stop and think, do they even want to hear this? Am I just gonna bring the mood down? Is this too much for them? And most of the time, you just keep it to yourself. You change the subject. You act normal. You say you're okay, even when you're not. And I think part of that comes from feeling like every time you do open up, it doesn't go the way you thought it would. I remember this one time, I actually tried. I tried to be honest with someone about how I was feeling, and that's not something I do often. I'm usually the type of person who just keeps things in, not because I want to, but because it feels easier. But this time, I thought it was different. I thought I could trust them, so I opened up, and it wasn't even anything crazy, just how I'd been feeling, what had been on my mind, the things I usually never say out loud. And in the moment, it felt fine, like they were listening, like they understood. And I remember thinking, okay, maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe it's not actually that hard to talk about this stuff. But then later, it changed. And I don't even know when it switched, but it did. Because the same things I told them, the things I trusted them with, they started using them against me. Not in some obvious way, just small comments, little jokes, little remarks that probably didn't seem like a big deal to anyone else. But I knew exactly where they were coming from. And I remember hearing that and thinking, why would you say that? Out of everything I shared with you, that's what you took from it. And I regretted opening up almost instantly. I went from feeling understood to feeling exposed. And that feeling stays with you. Because now it's not just about that one moment. It changes the way you see opening up altogether. Every time you think about talking about how you feel, that memory comes back. And it makes you hesitate, because you don't want to feel like that again. You don't want to give someone something real, just for them to turn it into something small. Or worse, something they can use against you. And after that, I started noticing how much I keep to myself. I'll be going through something, and no one around me would even know. Because I don't say anything, I just deal with it on my own. And I tell myself that's better, that's easier. Because at least when I keep things in, no one can use them against me. No one can misunderstand me. No one can make me feel like I'm too much. But at the same time, it gets heavy. Because you're carrying everything by yourself. And there's no release. No moment where you finally get to say, yeah, this is how I actually feel. And I think that's where the feeling of being a burden really comes from. Not from people actually saying it, but from experiences that make you feel like it. Because after a while, you start assuming that your feelings are too much for people. That if you actually said everything on your mind, it would push people away. So instead, you filter yourself. You only show the easier parts, the lighter parts, and you keep everything else hidden. And the thing is, people probably think you're fine, because that's all they see. They don't see the overthinking. They don't see the moments where you're sitting alone, completely stuck inside your own head. They just see the version of you that you allow them to see. And I think that's where it gets really isolating. Because even when you're around people, you still feel like you're dealing with everything alone. And I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. But it's what feels safe. Because being open doesn't feel safe anymore. And I hate that. I hate that one experience, or even a few experiences, can change the way you see something that should feel so simple. Opening up shouldn't feel like a risk. It shouldn't feel like you're handing someone a weapon and hoping they don't use it. But sometimes, that's exactly what it feels like. And now I catch myself stopping mid-sentence. I'll start to say something real, and then I'll just switch it, turn it into a joke, or just say, yeah, never mind, I'm good. Even when I'm not. And people believe it, because why wouldn't they? That's all I show them. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out how to balance it, because I don't want to keep everything inside forever. But I also don't want to open up to the wrong person again. And I think that's the hardest part, figuring out who actually deserves to hear that side of you, because not everyone does. And I'm starting to realize that just because someone is there, doesn't mean they're the right person to open up to. And that's something I wish I understood earlier, because maybe I wouldn't feel this hesitant now. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like if that never happened. If I never had that moment where I realized that not everything you say stays safe with someone. Would I talk more? Would I be more open? Or would I still be like this, constantly thinking about how everything I say might come across? Because now it's not just about what I'm feeling. It's about how it's going to be received, how it might be interpreted, how it might be remembered. and that changes everything. It turns something as simple as talking about your day into something you overthink. I'll literally sit there sometimes and replay a conversation in my head after it's already over, thinking, did I say too much? Did that sound weird? Do they see me differently now? And it's exhausting, because it's not even about the moment anymore. It's about everything after it. Everything that might happen because of it. And I think that's where the feeling of being a burden really settles in. Not in what you say, but in what you think your words do to other people. You start imagining their reactions, even if they've never shown you anything. You assume you're draining them, that you're adding weight to their day, that you're giving them something they never asked for. So instead, you just don't. You keep it light, you keep it surface level. You become easy to be around. And at first, that almost feels like a good thing. Like, yeah, people like being around you. You're chill. You don't bring problems. You don't complicate anything. But after a while, you realize something kind of painful about that. They like being around the version of you that doesn't actually say how they feel. And that thought just sits there, because it makes you question everything. If I actually said what was on my mind, would that still be the case? Would they still want me around? And that's where it gets quiet, because you don't really want the answer to that. So you just keep doing what you've been doing. You stay easy, you stay low maintenance, you make sure no one ever has a reason to feel like you're too much. But at the same time, you start to feel less and less known. Like, people know you, but not really. They know how you act, how you joke, how you respond, but they don't know what's actually going on inside your head. And it's weird because you're the one choosing that. No one's forcing you to stay quiet, but it still doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like something you learned, something that became automatic. And I think that's the part that sticks with me the most. How fast something like that can turn into a habit. I'll catch myself halfway through a sentence, already changing what I was about to say. Not because it's wrong, but because it feels like it might be too real, or too much. And I don't want to deal with what comes after that. Because once something real is out there, you can't take it back. Someone else has it now. They can think about it however they want. They can respond however they want. Or they can not respond at all. And somehow, that might be the worst one. Because then you're left sitting there wondering if you said something you shouldn't have, or if it just didn't matter. And both of those hurt in different ways. So it feels easier to avoid it completely. Keep everything controlled. Only say what you know won't backfire. Only show what feels safe. But the more you do that, the more distant everything starts to feel. Even the moments that are supposed to feel real start to feel filtered. Like there's always something you're holding back. And it's not even intentional anymore. It's just there. That hesitation, that pause before you say anything real. And I don't think people notice it, but I do, every time. And it's like this constant reminder of why it's there in the first place. Not because I have nothing to say, but because I learned that not everything should be said. At least not to everyone. And maybe that's true. But sometimes I wonder how different things would feel if I didn't have that thought in the back of my mind every time. If I could just say something, and not immediately think about what it might turn into later. Because that's what makes it heavy. Not the feeling itself, but everything that comes with it. The second guessing, the holding back, the constant filtering. It all adds up. And it changes you in small ways that you don't even notice at first. Until one day you realize you haven't really said how you feel in a long time. Not fully. Not without holding something back. And at that point, it doesn't even feel natural anymore. It feels unfamiliar. Like something you used to be able to do, but don't really know how to do anymore. And that's a weird place to be, because the thoughts are still there. The feelings are still there. They just don't leave your head as easily anymore. They stay with you. And you carry them, even when everything else seems fine. And that's probably the hardest part to explain. How everything can look normal on the outside, but feel completely different on the inside. Not worse all the time, just heavier, quieter. Like there's so much more going on than people can see. And it stays there. Not because it has nowhere to go, but because you don't trust where it might end up if you let it out. And I think what makes it even harder is that I don't really see it coming from the other side either. Because I would actually respect someone so much for opening up to me. Not in some surface level way, but actually telling me what's going on in their head. The stuff they don't usually say. I don't think I'd see them as a burden at all. If anything, it would make me feel closer to them. Like they trusted me enough to let me see that side of them. And I've thought about that a lot. Because if I wouldn't see someone else that way, why do I automatically assume people would see me like that? But at the same time, it's hard to prove that to myself. Because no one really does that with me. No one really sits there and just lets everything out. It's always kind of the same thing. Conversations stay on the surface, jokes, random topics, just passing time. And don't get me wrong, that stuff is fine. But it never really goes deeper than that. And I think that plays into it more than I realized. Because when no one around you is opening up yourself feels even more out of place. Like you'd be the only one doing it. Like you'd be shifting the whole conversation into something heavier that no one else was trying to talk about. So you just match the energy. You stay where everyone else is, even if there's more you could say. And after a while, that just becomes normal. No one says anything real. So you don't either. And it's weird because I don't even think people realize they're doing it. I don't think anyone is intentionally holding back. It just happens. But it creates this environment where everything stays at a certain level, and anything deeper than that just feels out of place. And I think that's part of why it's so hard to break out of. Because it's not just about your own hesitation anymore. It's about the space you're in, the people around you, the way conversations usually go, the unspoken understanding of what people talk about and what they don't. And even if I wanted to be the one to change that, to actually say what I'm thinking for once, there's still that thought in the back of my mind. What if it doesn't land the same? What if it changes things? What if it just sits there and no one knows what to do with it? Or what if they use it against me again? So instead, I keep it to myself. Not because I don't want to be understood, but because sometimes it feels like there's nowhere safe for it to go. And maybe if someone else went first, if someone actually just said what they were feeling without holding back, it would make it easier. It would make it feel normal. Like it's not this huge thing you have to overthink. Maybe that's all some of us need. Someone to go first. Someone to make it feel safe. Because sometimes you don't need someone to fix anything. You just want to know that you can finally say what's on your mind without regretting it later. And until then, everything just kind of stays where it is.